Just do it. Husband and wife are fighting and wind up giving each other the silent treatment. Well, the next day, the husband has to leave on a business trip, and the routine is the wife usually wakes him up. Well, he doesn't want to break the silent treatment, so he writes her a note saying, please wake me up at 5 a.m. He wakes up the next morning at 8 a.m. and wonders what happened till he sees the note by his bed, which says, it's 5 a.m., get up. The sacred in the mundane. Well, as I do, I started out by looking up this stuff, the etymology and the definitions, and this is what I learned about the word mundane, which was really interesting. It used to mean clear and elegant, the cosmopolitan person. That is its ancient meaning. Sacred used to mean make holy, not is holy, make holy. So once again, we have words that have gone very, different directions from where they started. Sacred is interesting to me because it started out as a verb and somehow became a noun. But I thought that was really good since I believe there is nothing intrinsic in anything. It's just up to the meaning we give it. We give meaning to stuff. We decide what's sacred, what's not sacred. And so make holy makes more sense because we get to make sacred, make holy anything we want. Which got me to thinking about a baby being born. Because I couldn't think of another thing that feels more sacred than the birth of a newborn. When the baby comes out, I was there for my son, right? The baby came out into my hands. I held my son while he took his first breath of life. And that moment doesn't go away, like ever. Spent the weekend with my son. Hadn't seen him in 2 months, and that was as long as I could go. So I went up to San Luis Obispo, where he lives, and we had a brilliant weekend together where he got to show me his new place. He just got a new apartment and how he's decked it out. And then he showed me where he works and all these different stuff. And it was great. It was great seeing my son in his life, doing his thing, knowing that I was there in that first moment when he was born. And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about first breath and how first breath feels so sacred to us. Anybody here who has held a newborn has had that feeling of, oh my God, this is something special. This is different. This isn't like anything else, and yet it is. And here's why. Because if first breath is sacred, then all breath is sacred. If all breath is sacred, then anything you're doing with that breath is sacred. So in fact, the only things that turn out to be mundane are those things that we think of as mundane. And that got me to the idea of the difference between a ritual and a routine. The only difference I can find between a ritual and routine is what we have labeled it. And I find this is true in some tasks that some people think are incredibly mundane. If anybody here has ever spent any time at a monastery where they were being devout to the monastery, they wanted to join. They weren't just going for a visit, like staying in one of their rooms or whatever, renting out a room, but going to a monastery to actually see about joining. you'll find that the very first task they give you is cleaning the toilets. Because they want you to know, like the old Zen proverb, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And so the first thing they put you to is a chop wood, carry water, or cleaning the toilets. Now, I personally love cleaning and find it to be a very deep meditation. That when I am cleaning something, it brings out in me my deepest sense of sacred, because I am breathing into it as I'm doing it, the life of clean. And by doing that, I've been doing this for years now, bringing meditation to cleaning. In fact, my wife notices that when I'm upset, it's one of the first things I'll go do is clean the house. And it's really kind of funny to me sometimes how when the house is at its worst, she'll find some way of pushing my buttons. Just kidding. But it does get the house clean, and in a hurry. So there's a way in which we get to decide. Now, lots of people, when they go clean something, just go, ugh, it's just another routine task I got to do. But it doesn't have to be that way, because I find when I clean and bring breath to it, when I bring my meditation to it, what happens is I not only rise, but have epiphanies, have new thoughts, have things come to me that may not have come to me before by being in the presence, by being focused, by being right there. You know, you've heard me say this a million times, to abandon the truth in our hour of need is to not understand the truth. We bring that to each moment. And I find, for instance, gardening is another one that is actually pretty easy to bring the sacred to. People who love gardening feel the sacredness of having their hands in the dirt, of planting whatever it is they're planting, and then watching it grow. So certain things in life seem to lend themselves more coming to church. Seems to lend itself more to feeling sacred. And yet it's only because we said so. It's not as if this building is built out of some different substance than any other place in Burbank. What makes it sacred is that we say so. And so I noticed that about my home, and I started working in my home to create what I call, have my home be a sacred space. Have my home with ash be a sacred space. Because we get to create that wherever we are. It doesn't matter where we are. We get to create that. Plus, we don't have to take on that somebody else says it's not. We don't have to take on somebody else's idea of the routine as opposed to the ritual. We get to decide for ourselves what it is we bring to it. Now, I notice there are certain things that we may begin feeling as sacred, but then can fall into a routine, and this happened to me around my music. When I first started playing music, it was very sacred to me. I don't know that I thought about it that way. I don't know that I had the word sacred in mind at the time, but looking back on it, I certainly treated it that way. I treated my practicing, sitting with my guitar and practicing, as a meditation, and I would dive deep into myself as I practiced, and I would bring forth songs and musical ideas and all kinds of things out of that were so exciting to me and that I was passionate about, that made me feel alive. And then what happened is I decided to make a living out of it. I said this was now going to be my vocation. This was going to be the way I made my living. And it wasn't long after that what used to feel sacred started to feel very mundane. It wasn't after that I was so busy worrying about where my next dollar was coming from to pay my bills one of the things that I notice a lot of us make sacred is money. Think about all the time you think about money. You think about paying your bills. You think about, what we focus on, we give power to. What we focus on, we have made sacred with our attention. And so it becomes really important to look at how that works. Am I saying if you love something, don't make it your way of making your living? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that for me what happened is it really killed the joy. It really sucked it right out. But it didn't do that. I did that. I did that by changing where my focus of attention was, which was on loving playing music. And I did it to the point at which I dried up around music, to the point where I don't play much anymore. I'm now, I fiddle around on my guitar some, but it is not the main meditation I go to anymore. Now it's being here with you guys and writing talks. Writing each week's talk is an incredible meditation for me now. Allows me to dive in and get deep with all this stuff. And as I was looking at all this, it was Ash who actually gave me the idea. She said, I would really like you to talk on the sacred in the mundane. And so I started looking at that and diving into that. And then what happened is she said, my kid has two lacrosse games on Sunday. I'm not going to be able to make it. Now this was a really interesting moment for me, because I got pretty upset. I was like, what do you mean you're not coming? Wrote this talk for you, working on it all week. It allowed me to dive into this thing at a whole nother level because it's great. She's going to see her kid play in lacrosse. That's really important. So what she's doing, I took personal, and it really wasn't at all. And yet I did, because, I'm human and I take stuff personal. But it's what we do next, right? That's what we talk about here all the time. It isn't what we do first, it's what we do next. So next I started thinking about this stuff, and here was the first thing that came to me, right after thinking about principle. That this was my chance to bring in principle right here, because she's not doing anything against me. This is a sacred moment for her to spend with her children. This is a sacred moment for me to be here with you. So here I am, pretty upset, my feelings hurt, and I realized that I had not ever talked to you guys about something called spiritual bypass, and how important it is to look at it when we are doing these processes, when we are looking at principle, when we are being with this stuff. Because I noticed for myself, as I am repeating our identity prayer and our affirmation, that I'm still upset. And I could have, and have in the past, and seen so many others do it, say, well, I'm no longer upset. I'm fine now, because I have my, affirmation. So there's this whole thing that happens called spiritual bypass, which is when we intellectually know something that has not made it to here. And yet we act as if it has. And it is the acting as if it has that is the spiritual bypass. When we act in a way that is not in alignment with how we truly feel, we are, and trying to be spiritual. Get that, trying to be spiritual. That is when we are in spiritual bypass. And so I'm sitting in meditation trying to be spiritual, noticing this about myself and noticing I'm still upset about this. And it occurred to me that there was more to this than meets the eye. And so I have this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. I love this quote. He goes, when cooking potatoes, you need to keep the fire going. You cannot eat raw potatoes. In the same way, you have to cook your anger, your upset on the fire of mindfulness, and this may take time. And so what I realized is the key here for me, the key here for you, is to not doubt that that if you are in mindfulness, over time, it will cook and you will shift. If you doubt it, then the odds of you shifting are actually pretty slight. But I did not doubt it. I did not doubt my shift. I just didn't know how long it was going to take. But I was okay with that. And I want you to be okay with that. I want you to know that spiritual bypass does not work. You can't jump to feeling something you don't yet feel. What you can do is, instead of acting as if you've reached it, hold out our principle as a GPS, our identity prayer as a destination, and know that you can get there. You will get there if you do the work. You don't ever have to deny you're upset, you're out of whackness, whatever's going on for you. If you do the work and keep at it and be disciplined about it, you will reach that shift. And that shift feels great, and then it's no longer spiritual bypass. Then instead what's happening is you actually feel it. It's here now. Now, does that mean that the next time you don't get upset anymore? Once you feel it here, it's like, I feel it here now, I'm done. I got it down now. No, at least that hasn't been true for me. What's true for me is that each time I got to go through it again. The same process. Same process of, okay, I'm upset about this, my feelings are hurt, whatever's going on is going on, and now I need to do my work again, and it's going to take what it's going to take. Because you can't eat raw potatoes. They got to be cooked. And in the same sense, mindfulness takes time, particularly if something has happened that has upset you. And so we have this practice, this amazing teaching to fall back on, where we get to have affirmations, we get to know the truth, and in that knowing intellectually, hang in there with the upset, the feelings you're actually having, until they actually shift. What you don't want to do is defend those feelings. What you don't want to do is come up with all the reasons why you have those feelings. Like I could say the reason I have those feelings is my wife isn't here today. Or had those feelings because my wife's not here today. But that would be not the truth. The truth is I have those feelings because I have those feelings that are hooked into a meaning I gave to her not being here today that had nothing to do with the truth, which is that she's just with her kids. Which was a good thing. And so working through this stuff is really quite astounding when we apply it to the real life we're living. To the real life of what is happening before our eyes. To the real upset that's occurred, the real pain, the real loss of job, loss of relationship, loss of health, whatever it is. When we actually go into this stuff works incredibly well when we're disciplined enough to continually apply it over and over and over. And that's what gets us to have more sacred moments, less mundane moments, and have something happen in life that instead of ordinary becomes extraordinary. You have a choice. You have a choice in any moment to say, okay, I'm going to breathe into this because my first breath was sacred, which means this breath is sacred, which means what I do with this breath is sacred. I get to think that way, even if I'm not feeling that way right now, and in thinking that way, keep it that thought until it becomes the feeling. Which it ultimately will if you stick with the discipline. Are you with me on this? Yes. It's all about the discipline. It's all about the practice. It's all about the work. And then all of a sudden, moments become more and more sacred all the time. Things that would just seem so petty and so ridiculous, all of a sudden look kind of sacred and seem kind of like, wow, there's more here than meets the eye, because there always is. Behind every event, there is beyond the veil, that veil that covers our eyes and makes us think this is reality. This is the only way it is. This is the only way it could be. When it's never like that. There's always a ton more stuff going on. There's always a ton more to rise up to. There's always a way to get to that sacred space if we're willing to do the work. Not spiritually bypass, but really hang in there with the question of what's it going to take, keep repeating the affirmations, keep moving forward, and knowing that sooner or later it clicks in. You got to know that. It's in that knowing that sooner or later it clicks in that really makes the shifts occur. So you get to decide. The next time you're doing any task, is it routine or is it ritual? Is it ordinary, or can you bring the extraordinary to it? Because you have that power within you. Each of us has that power within us to bring to every single moment something magnificent, something extraordinary. And I know that for each and every one of you. Thank you. All right, take out what you're going to give. Hold it in your hand. This is not just money. This is God. This is sacred energy. This is our putting forth who and what we are into the world. The more we do this, the more we receive. This is how the law of circulation works. We send it out. The more you send out, the more it comes back, and it grows, and it grows, and it grows. Let's say our affirmation together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am. And so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face